Good evening and welcome to our 85th episode of the Eve Prosper Market Show. I'm your host Lockefox, and I'm here with all of your market news to get ready for the weekend and the week that has happened. So, without further ado, and thank you so much to the patient people tuning in live because we're starting a bit later than usual, let's get straight into the show. But first, we start where we usually do, talking about some quick show news. First, I want to thank everybody who is joining us from the latest 07 show. If this is your first show, welcome. And if you got to tune in live, welcome again. It's always great to see new faces in the chat and in the show. If you want to get in touch with us, the very best thing to remember is Eve Prosper. That'll get you to Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and our blog. You can also join our Discord. Links are down in the information down below. Where if you want to get in touch with me, that is the absolute very best place to do so. The show, like I've said before, is brought to you thanks to our generous patrons. We are up on patreon.com/EveProsper. Even $1 goes an extremely long way, and our patrons help keep this show on the air, free of charge, ad-free, week over week, with no gated content, because they believe in the content we're producing, and I cannot thank them enough. So, if you enjoy the show, if you get value out of it, if you are thinking, I would love to buy that guy a beer, the very best way to do so is through our Patreon. If you can't support us monetarily, absolutely fine. Totally understand. No judgment there. Do make sure to get subscribed on our Twitch, our Twitter, and our YouTube. Like every good marketeer, I like seeing numbers going up and to the right. So get subscribed, get notified when we have shows. Do be sure that we do have office hours streams. I try to do them about once a month, but I have a really hard time scheduling them. The very best way to be in touch for those is to join our Discord and subscribe so that you get notified when we go on the air. Try to do them on the weekends. We might have one this weekend if the fates align. So, with that, now that I've got all of the pre-show out of the way, all the pre-roll out of the way, let's get right into the show. And we're going to open our show and talk about the CSM. So if you guys aren't already aware, the Council of Stellar Management campaign season is open. I do believe that the application deadline has not quite passed, but it's coming up real soon. So if you were thinking of getting your name in the hat, you should get it there quick. If you are an alpha, if this is your first rodeo, I encourage you to go check out the dev blogs explaining what the Council of Stellar Management does. And remind you very kindly that you only need 1 month of subscription time. You need it to be in either by this weekend, I think, to be able to be eligible to vote. So this allows you to, if you get on it right now, and you don't delay, you can vote as an alpha and make a difference into who is representing you in front of the developers. So I encourage everyone to vote, who can vote. Get out there, get informed. There's a bunch of shows going on at the moment. A whole bunch of different shows giving content. There's a whole forum on the official forums for it. There's a lot of research to do. There's a lot of political drama, and well, drama politique is quite in vogue these days. So with that, we do have an official Prosper ticket. If you enjoy what we enjoy, if you enjoy economic reporting, if you are interested in tools automation, if you are somewhat high-sec skewing, interested in industry and production, this is my short list for who I will be voting for. First on our list is Roden. If you'd vote for me, I encourage you to vote for Roden. He was running the Neocom's economic reporting. He has been running a bit of an economic powerhouse corporation. Lately, he writes some really interesting blogs. If you are looking for more economic representation, Rodin is your guy. Number 2 on our ticket is Commander A's, longtime fan of the show, more of a generalist, sort of everyman. If you are the sort of person who likes to experiment and who likes to do a lot of things in a lot of different spaces, Commander A's is where I would put my vote. And then number 3 on our list is Erika Mizune, who has run several times in the past and who I respect greatly, and I wish her the best of luck this year. It's been... she's had a hard time meta-wise to get some traction, and I'm hoping that this year is her year. If you are, for instance, at all interested in accessibility topics, Erika Mizune is your person. I am personally a fan of proposals for things like colorblind mode in games, and if that's your sort of thing, if you're in that sort of vein, she's also an incredibly competent industrialist, and really well informed and well connected as far as the meta goes, even if she's a bit on the quiet side. So it's she has our support this year, and longtime fans of the show will notice there's one person missing from this list, and that's Steve Rnukin. And Steve Rnukin has been on 3 councils of stellar management. He has been an excellent advocate for API development, but he's on my shit list this year because of his milquetoast defense of the monthly economic numbers. If you guys aren't in the know, the latest economic numbers came out last week, and Quant said that the CSM would like to reduce the clarity on some of the production and mining numbers. The CSM minutes came out this last Monday, and we can name and shame Aerith for asking for this particular change. They want to reduce the resolution for Nullsec down to quadrants, quote unquote, so that you could talk about, well, the North is really productive or the West is really productive. And I think that's a direct boost to super capital producers, and it's a giant nerf to every other casual player in the game. Fuzzy Steve Rnukin did release a statement this morning, just detailing how he feels, and I still don't think he's gone far enough to defend the data we count on to make this show. So, I will leave the door open for him to come back into the fold. I do think this data is important, and I do think it's valuable, and I don't think that it's something that we should just roll over and give up for free, essentially, is kind of my problem at the moment. It really feels like we're just giving it to, we're just letting Nullsec get their way and losing an incredibly valuable data source. And as far as making an impassioned, reasoned plea as to why we need it, we've seen since Ascension a really big change in the way the economy has been working. This last year has shown, as we move into citadels and the new engineering complexes, and with alphas, and with all of the new mining boosts, EVE is becoming far more decentralized. So if you have been saber rattling for years and years about, screw JITA, and why does everybody go there when we could decentralize? It's happening now. And to change the monthly economic report to mask out where it's happening completely fogs over an important new chapter in the way EVE is working. So I think this is important data, not just because I like data and I like graphs. And I do think that the monthly economic report is useful the way it is, and I'm not even really advocating for more data in there. But the truth of the matter is that there's going to be a lot of reporting value in there for telling the story of this ascension age with alphas and new mining, and to obfuscate that data is going to do an enormous disservice to people who are interested in where the bulk economy is going, especially if you're the kind of person who wants to who likes to go on features and ideas and try to improve the game. You're going to lose a big view into what's happening industrially. I think that the data is important. I encourage all of you to reach out to your groups and discuss it, of course. But until Fuzzy Steve stands up for this data, like we expect him to, because he is our advocate, I can't put him in our CSM ticket. And it breaks my heart because I like him a lot as a person, as a CSMer, but I have to put my foot down. And I will not be voting for Fuzzy Steve until he stands up for the monthly economic numbers. So, that's my speech. I know I just wasted a good 5 minutes of my life. I hope you guys found it interesting. I do encourage you to reach out to CCP Guard and CCP Quant about how you feel about the data. I encourage you to read the CSM notes. The economic data is on page 41 with shiny new graphs from Quant. But I feel very strongly about this, and I like, this is the show, right? Like, you take away economic data, you're gonna have a worse Prosper show. So I have to fight for it. With that, let's go into the meat of the show. I have wasted enough of your guys' time. Let's talk about the real star of the show, Plex. Plex. So, looking at Plex, we see a recent nosedive because it looks like a sale has opened up, and we're we're approaching the 1 billion mark. The scales have washed out because we've been so steady for so long. If we zoom out to the 1 year view, we can see that, yeah, we're down very slightly, and being zoomed in kind of screws up our view. We're trending downwards, but I'm pretty sure this is only due to a Plex sale going on. And we'll be right back to that magic 1.0405 level we've been at for the last month. Zooming in on supply chains, we see that we're a little bit thin and should be expecting upward momentum, to be completely honest. But things are staying extremely steady. Theme for this week is a very quiet week. There's just not a ton to report here. I know this looks drastic, but, well, it doesn't even look drastic. It's like, 20 million difference. That's basically noise. So we're seeing a little bit of weakness in the buy order wall, which could be a signal of nearby citadels coming online, I think is what this data would show. Yeah, so it's interesting. It's weird. Zooming in on all the other RMT items, we still see skill extractors leading the charge. The margin is narrowing though, but I mean, we're talking like 10 million ISK more per RM than 10 million ISK when you adjust for RM. So I don't think it's really worth the trouble. Next, we look at skill trading, and looks like prices have taken a shot up, while costs have stayed level. So things are getting better and better for our zombie farming friends. Again, if you're not familiar with zombie farming, that is the ability to have a character that you just suck skill points out of and you sell the skill points. What we're looking at is the production margin on that at 800 ISK per hour, ISK per skill point, for just training. And this could mean a couple hundred, or this might even be as high as 500 million ISK per account that is doing skill trading. So this is a rather interesting bump. It's a good time to sell, if it looks like. And we can see last week we said It looked like supplies were getting a little short. And this week we're seeing supplies very short. So we actually came all the way up to the 700 million mark. And this is an excellent time if you have been sitting on skill injectors or skill extractors. This is a great time to cash out. I don't know how long and how high this will stay. I think that as long as we're seeing anemic values in the market, this will stay unsteady. But we're talking about free money for skill traders, and I know there's no such thing as mine to minerals being free, but this is free money. I've explained it a couple of times in the past, and if you don't need the skill points, now's the time to get rid of them. Moving on to our indexes, we look across and see relatively steady period. Net trade is staying even across the entire board, even as ship values are sliding. We also see that despite the spikes in mineral supply, the actual total net trade is staying relatively steady, meaning that the price to volume ratio is staying exactly the same. Otherwise, there's not a ton to say here. I'd like to see this ship value turn around, but as we look at the rest of the numbers across the market, I think we're going to end up seeing that there's just not a lot of places to absorb ship productivity, essentially. Especially as mineral prices crash. If your mineral prices crash, your ship values crash, but you're not going to see more ships sold, so the net costs are going down. So yeah, that's the thing. Next, talking about total destruction, please ignore the giant dip here. This was a problem on our host. I'm going to go backfill the data eventually. I have a plan to fix it. It's just broken for now. We are seeing a reduced capacity in the total destruction numbers. Again, this is borne out across the entire market. Things are reasonably weak. It's a rather quiet week, economically speaking, and it's interesting to see that the counts have come down slightly, very slightly, but the total value destroyed is staying steady. It sure does seem like a lot more supers are coming off the lines, and we may need to start recalculating how we talk about those going forward. Right now, they are excluded from our stats because calculating them dynamically is kind of a pain in the ass for me. It's a thing that I need to go fix, but I think that we are going to start seeing more and more super proliferation, which means that it's going to be more and more common to see them on the field and see more of them die. Now, I haven't seen a whole lot of posts from the Z Killboard feed saying that a lot of supers are dying, but this just might be a fact of me not paying close enough attention to the market. So this is interesting. We'll see what happens next week. I'm hoping that people stop sitting on their hands and actually go fight each other, essentially, is kind of the problem here. Moving on to minerals. Tritanium went down to 4.0 last week, and we saw it bounce hard off that floor. We're back up to, we were up to 4.5, and now we're down to 4.2. If we zoom in, we see that this big glut of supply is starting to wane off. We might be seeing, we may have been seeing more supply coming out of Nullsec from over mining, and as super producers get their shit in gear and manage to keep that glut from hitting the market, the prices should go up. I personally think a 4.0 target is not a bad one. We might slip to 3.5 if things go wonky. So we're high at the moment. If you had bought in down here under the 4.0 as a industrial resupplier, I'd be tempted to sell off just to count the extra money as free margin. You could almost make 10%. So like that's the play I would make. But again, I don't tell people to buy tritaniums, so I don't know who did that. Moving on to pyrite, we're seeing the prices continue to slump. We were at 6.0 last week, and we're down to 5.5 this week. Zooming in, we see the supply lines were starting to reduce last week, but have returned to the 7.5 billion units mark. As long as we're this high, I think we're going to continue to see movement down to 5.5, maybe get a little bit lower. Again, I expect there to be really high supply lines and just not a whole bunch to go for it to all go into at the moment. Next, the Mechs trade. This one's been a favorite to watch over the last little bit, but it is slowly sinking. We're down to about 70 at the moment. And we keep seeing these really high peaks and valleys when it comes to the supply chain. And for all of this noise going from 0.25 billion to 1.25 billion, we don't see a lot of price movement for that supply instability. I'm not really sure what's driving that. I actually would expect a lot more volatility given how high and low how big this differential is. But we're sagging down to 70. I personally, like, if I were a betting man, I'd probably put some opportunistic buy orders at 62 or 63 as a long-term sort of stopgap. And if you can collect at that level, aim for a 75, 76 would be a decent return for the effort. I don't know how many units of Mechs you'll actually catch with those low buy orders. But like that's at least the play I would think of is you go and you put stop orders down about here, and if the market falls through them, you get to make free money off of it. It takes very little effort to keep those orders there. It just takes the discipline to keep them there. And we might see, as if you're watching the longer trend, we are still seeing sort of a slight positive trend on supply. And if that continues, we might get down to the 65 sell order. But it's risky. It's unknown. We'll see. Unless Hyena goes kablooey, which it could, because what I should have mentioned earlier is rumor down the grapevine is Burn Jita is this weekend and may actually be starting now if you're tuned in live. This is more a warning for shippers than a opportunity for buyers yet. Longtime fans of the show will know that my advice in Burn Jita is to wait until the following weekend to snap up all the pent-up demand. And that's when you make the play, is that there's not really anything to do during Burn Jita. All of the action is afterwards. Next, Isogen just keeps falling. Not a whole lot to say here. We're almost down to 45. No signs of stopping. Supply keeps trucking up. And we're up to 1 billion units on the market. Again, I don't know what to tell you on Isogen because I can't predict the bottom of this. I just know that things are going to keep getting worse until they stop getting worse. This is definitely a falling knife situation, and there's no good moves as far as I can tell, because right now we have linear increasing supply and linear decreasing prices. I can't tell you when that breaks. I can't tell you where the floor is here. Next, Nexian, which has been taking a beating, is down in the 300 to 320 mark. We're seeing a lot of weakness in this market, and I think this is more due to relaxed production demand, relaxed PvP demand, without ships and active hulls to really absorb this stuff. It's kind of an oddball material. We aren't seeing a lot of extra supply though, so that's sort of why I'm thinking this is a demand side problem. We've seen the supply stay steady at the 200 million mark for the last couple of weeks, and we were at 340 and now we're at 320. I think this can recover back to the 360 mark, maybe get back up to 380. But this really looks like a demand side problem. Next, Zydrene keeps falling. As Abe was saying in the pre-show to buy Zydrene, I don't know if I can agree with him. As we zoom in, there is instability in the buy orders as we bump up against that 1K. But supply chains keep growing. And though I expect Nullsec to have the discipline not to overproduce Zydrene, I don't expect that same discipline from Wormhole Space. So for all of those Rorquals that are running completely independently, I expect them to keep trashing the Zydrene market. So I would not buy Zydrene unless you're getting in at this 950 or lower opportunistic buy order. And even then, your margin is super thin. Like, I think you need a little bit more margin than that to be gambling there. I don't think I'd buy. I think I might put a buy order at 900 just as a joke, and try to get the 1.05. But this is a risky market. I would not jump in. Megasite was showing weakness this last week and is down at the 1500 mark. It's doing some very strange patterns here on the main market. If we zoom in, we see the real death knell here as supplies have almost doubled this week, leading to a precipitous decline. So if you are holding on to Megasite and you are watching this live, sell, pause the show, go sell your stuff, because you are currently right now losing your shirt. I would not bet on a rebound. This is again a falling knife situation that you probably could put a buy order under 1.3 to try and catch some of this falling action. But I don't know if this is a quick peak up to 60 million or a sustained supply at 60 million. Because if we stay sustained at 60 million, I think we'll be at 1.4 steady state price in a week or so. And then last, Morphite, which is again being really boring, has seen a little bit of interesting stuff on the volume side of the equation. As I've said week over week, if you can get Morphite under 10K, buy it. Hold for an 11 or 12K sellout, and we haven't seen that yet, which is fine. This is gonna hold low until a war starts, so it's not a bad investment nest egg to go throw a little bit of spare money at, but know that you're going to be sitting on that for a while, and you're going to have to wait for the pop to come, and I can't tell you when the pop is coming. So it's one of those long and slow markets to invest in. Next, moving on to fuel. Things have been relatively steady. We keep seeing strength in the nitrogen isotopes. This is a little bit higher than I expect. I expect it back down at 700. We might see some weirdness during burn JITA for nitrogen, but I sincerely doubt it. And the weird thing that has been bothering me since I ever made this graph was that build margins on blocks has got razor thin. And okay, so Galente blocks are doing okay. But everyone else is extremely thin. Like this is encroaching. So usually this is a bit of a production rant, is that as much as we joke about mined minerals being free, most guys who are producing, like the vast bulk of the production group, knows what their time is worth and will change accordingly. But we were doing okay back with Ascension launching, even though we expected prices to fall. We still saw decent margin all through December. And then as we came out of that and got back into activity, I don't know. This reads like a bunch of people are being rubes and eating their production margin, and I just don't get it. Like the Galente blocks are doing okay. Like this isn't a great margin to write home about, but these spikes are at least a little bit warming. Like you might buy, you might start a build last week and just come to market at the right time and feel like a genius, but like the Minmatar and Amar blocks, like we're seeing those even cross to zero negative margin. We're seeing the same thing happen on Caldari blocks. And frankly, that's just unacceptable as a producer. Like you shouldn't be doing value added work for losing margin. And I know we make fun of like the general, the pubbies that oh yeah, my mined minerals are free. If I just build all my battleships from my mined minerals, well, I'll be so far ahead. And yeah, I know that guy. Like I've met that guy several times, but the baseline demand for the extended market is smarter than that. They know if they're losing money, and this looks like they're losing money. And it might just be an oversupply. Like we might be seeing that block demand has fallen out. That might be the problem going on here. And there's just a bunch of people trying to burn off excess supply. But I would have expected that signal to come 3 weeks ago. And we still see the same pattern now. Even after 3 weeks of adjustment, and I expect this stuff to catch up pretty quick. So fuel blocks are annoying me. Next, strontium is our canary in the coal mine for SOV warfare, and we see supply chains just keep going bonanza. So nothing to report here. Heavy water is another interesting metric for the space bards, the boosting ships. The supply chain has been getting thin, even with strontium taking a big spike. Prices keep climbing, so I'm not sure if this is just not enough coming out of the market or what exactly is going on here. It's a little hard to figure out if this is a supply or demand side problem. Next, moving on to outliers. We start where we usually do, looking at advanced materials because I really like Tech 2. Not a lot to talk about here except for plasmonic materials finally getting out of the basement. And fermionic condensates are taking a peak, which is nice to see, seeing as we reported last week that dysprosium was high. So thankfully, now that I didn't over-explain how to speculate in the moon market, it actually did what I said it was going to do. So cool. I really need to go and do another explanation show about that, but we don't have time for that today. Next, moving into PI4 level materials. I had said last week that I was thinking that we might start seeing a small oversupply going into FanFest, where there are a lot more producers coming into the market trying to get their slice of the cash and slowly getting into oversupply. But then things got a little bit weird on organic mortar applicators, took a big jump. Sterile conduits took a big jump. Everybody sort of turned slightly around, and I don't know if that's just market inactivity or it's hard to, again, unspin supply and demand in this graph. So kind of weird. Next, interesting one on our list this week is the crane. Again, this sort of looks like the pattern we talked about last week about low throughput Tech 2 being overproduced as the bottom falls out and somebody buys out the whole freaking thing. These tend to crash pretty quick, so if you're building cranes and you're not already in flight, then I wouldn't jump in on this. But I would keep an eye on this over the weekend for a crash under the 145 million mark. might be a signal worth watching. So if you can get in at 140, 138, you might be able to get a cheap couple units of cranes that you could then sell at the 148 level is sort of the target I'd have there. Another interesting one, and I'm not sure what to say about this, but True Sancha power diagnostic systems are on a real tear. And what we usually see in these is that in this sort of item, that tells me that the drop rates have changed, but we're talking about almost a doubling in price, and usually they don't half the supply. So I don't know if this has suddenly become a popular meta item, or if somebody's just buying them up to screw with the market. Like, this is a little bit of a weird behavior. We usually see a reset, and we might see plus 20%, and we'll see some instability. But this is way up. Like, maybe they're not even dropping anymore. So this might be a bug. I'm not sure. Call CCP. Next, into our prediction review, where I figure out if I know what the hell I'm talking about or if I am full of crap. Hyena. So I said, we've been talking about the Hyena for like 3 weeks now. And I gave this whole speech about the Tech 2 low volume market. What happens is that you end up with a supply crash, and then everybody looks at their spreadsheets and overproduces, and then we see this huge glut come to the market, and everybody's sort of sitting there kicking themselves about, oh man, I'm not making all that money I thought I was going to make, but I got to get rid of it, and I don't give a shit. And they finally dump the market where somebody finally says, I've had enough. I don't care. I just need them gone. I need them off my wallet. And we see this overcorrection. And then I said, don't everybody jump on this at once, which, again, I can't control everybody. And I was going to say, oh, well, it's going to come back here, and then we're going to see this pattern for a long, long time, and I don't know when it's going to happen again. And then it happens right again, because I talked about it, and I told a bunch of people about it, and now there's somebody who's made this part of their investing strategy. So, again, if you're not going to listen to my warnings, at least listen to this warning and be very, very careful about the total number of units you take in on a market like this. Like, we're only seeing 40 units sell per day on median. And so that would tell me that I really don't want to hold more than maybe 15 hyenas if I were trading. And even to try and cash out on these spikes, you got to be really watching your stuff and be ready to jump when the spike shows up, because you only have like 48 hours to jump on it. So I don't love these. I just thought it was a cool pattern for a more active investor. And then another interesting one is the Mecharial. I thought had bottomed out at 310 because supply chains have just sort of stayed steady. But the prices keep falling, which tells me again that Null is just sitting on their ass doing nothing but making money. Which, I mean, if that's the case, if that's really the case, that everybody's just sort of in their bubble, being fat and happy and industrial, that's fine. But like the signals I'm seeing aren't quite all adding up. Like, if there's a whole bunch of people generating all of this extra wealth, why hasn't Plex risen? Like, we expect extra cash to land in Plex, and Plex has stayed flat as a board, despite the ever-growing bounty numbers, despite the ever-growing cash value numbers in wallets, and despite the fact that nobody's getting their shit blown up. Means that, like, we should be seeing Plex rise, and it hasn't happened. And, like, all of these are signals that I would be absolutely run into the thing, but then I go look at everything else, and I'm like, 60% says it's supposed to be up, and 30% says it should be slightly down, and the other 10% is, I don't know, so, whatever. Last but not least, let's talk about the violence report. Again, please ignore the big fat bug in the middle of my graphs. We are seeing, again, similar mix that we see week over week. New challenger this week is the Rorqual. I actually expected the Rorqual to show up sooner, to be completely honest. Even with the panic button, they are still pretty juicy targets. And we also won't be seeing the pricey drones get destroyed, so it's a little hard to really see what's going on here. Looking at our solar systems, Auga is still hot. I don't know. I am really not sure where Auga is in on the map. So please tell me what the hell is going on there. 9-4 and KBP are also two new ones on my list. These are two places I've never heard of. But Jita and Tama, again, rounding out the list. And also remember that this bug is within our 15-day window, so we might have a problem that I'm overcorrecting. Placid and Providence is a little bit interesting, but it's I don't know. There's not a ton going on here as far as total throughput, so just interesting to watch. And with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up the show. I want to thank everyone who tuned in live. We had quite an audience of, let's see, a little over 50 people tuned in live. So that's always great to see all of the new players. I have heard a whole bunch of you guys coming from the 07 show, so welcome once again. Do remember the travel advisory of Burn Jita being this weekend, and please don't fly something you're not willing to lose. For the traders out there, if Burn Jita actually happens, be ready next week. We do expect things to be like... What's happened in the past is that Burn Cheetah happens and they get a bunch of they can get a bunch of freighters like on the first day because it's a surprise and nobody reads the news. But then all of the miners and haulers and industrialists just stay home. They go play Rocket League all weekend instead. And then the next weekend they come back with all that extra supply from 2 weeks and dump it on the market. So a savvy investor will put in stop buy orders at opportunistic levels, way under prices. Like I'd shoot for an extra 10%, and the gobble up that extra supply that'll show up thanks to the Burn Jita basically keeping everyone at home. But that's my last piece of advice. I should have put it at the front of the show, but I decided to rant against Steve Vernukin. I do still love you, Steve, but you gotta protect my data, or I can't vote for you. With that, we're going to end this show. I want to thank everybody who tuned in live again. I know we're running a little bit over time. If you want to follow the show, the very best way to do so is just remember Eve Prosper. That'll get you to Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and our blog. Do be sure to get subscribed if you enjoy what we do. If you want to support us directly, the very best way to do so is through our Patreon at patreon.com/Eve Prosper. Even $1 goes an incredibly long way. It keeps us in software and hardware and equipment. And if you want to buy me a beer, that is the best way to do so. Let's see. And then last, if you can't support us directly, I completely understand. It is not a problem at all. Do make sure to get subscribed, though, because I do like seeing numbers moving up and to the right, like every good industrialist should. So with that, I'm going to wrap up the show. Thank you, everyone who's tuned in live. If you're tuned in live, we're going to do a 30-minute Q&A afterwards. If you're watching this on YouTube, this is the end of the show. So see you guys next week.